Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. My name's Daniel Peters, and my colleague Jay and I will be giving the ESRI tech trends and an update. So to kind of start off with, I always think it's important for you guys to know who your ESRI team is. You know, not everyone is here, but a lot of the people who work with North Carolina, you have Dawn, I know many worked with Dawn, myself, Jay on the local side, Blake as well. But he wasn't able to make it this trip. And then from the state side, you have Sam and Joe. They were here yesterday. So I always think it's really good for, like, you know, we were gone for COVID, for a couple years. We done some switching to ESRI. I always think it's kind of good to know who's who. So one of the things I like to start off with in terms of the general trends is to kind of focus on the 9 areas where the ESRI technology can kind of really help you all. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these, right, because we're only given 20 minutes. But these are the patterns that when we talk with executives, when they say, hey, I have a problem, can GIS address this? And typically, 9 times out of 10, it's going to fall into one of these categories, right? Mapping and visualization, that's pretty normal that you guys have been working on. That's like, hey, can you print me a map? I need a map of hydrants. Data management, you want to be able to see, okay, we need to manage our database of all of our fire hydrants. Field mobility, many of you all are using our field mobility technology, being able to collect data out in the field, and also having other individuals who aren't your GIS powerhouse users collecting data on your behalf. You almost want to make everybody like a little GIS node, right? Like a little data collector, right? Boom, 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 all these individuals. Monitoring your data, doing analytics, kind of making decisions ahead of time, design and planning, decision support, working with executives. I'm sure you guys seen really great case studies and stories about, I don't even know what GIS can really do. You come in, you're able to support some of the decisions, especially like policymakers. Constituent engagement, this is pretty hot right now, having data available to the public for them to see, and not just like that, that zoning map that's just like a PDF, but hey, how can the citizens ask questions on the data that you guys have, that really data transparency. We've seen some really cool stuff coming out for public health, for emergency management, all that kind of stuff, just getting data all out to the public, and then sharing collaboration as well. And the big thing too is, I'm sure you guys are starting to see this, that GIS is starting to become like this enterprise environment. It used to be like, hey, silo data, print a map, here maybe 1 or 2 applications, but really it's like this whole web environment that's coming to play where everything's interconnected. How can we get Department of Social Services to view a map? How can we get public health to view a map? How can we get data collected from social services, which isn't your typical, GIS power department? How can we get data from them to give it to other departments? Using your enterprise environment, SaaS online environment, web applications. Instead of having a Pro and ArcMap installed on every machine, and you kind of forget, oh, this one had this version. How can we get them in a web environment where they're very comfortable in that space and get them comfortable using GIS? It's like, people, you walk up and people say, I don't even know how to spell GIS, right? But now it's like, well, we want them comfortable in GIS. In some cases, what you really want to do is when you want them to use GIS when they don't really know it, right? That's the dream scenario, so. And the other thing is too, and I'll kind of toss it to Jay in a second, where the trends we're starting to see are these enterprise sites and hubs. How can I, as an individual, be able to self-serve GIS? I do not have to go to you I need the most up-to-date information on data. Can you send me this? Oh, can you send me this zip file on, the last quarter's update on this data? What we want to have is that this environment is just so easy for your individuals to go get data. That you set up the infrastructure, either in a hub environment for citizens, an enterprise sites environment for your internal staff, and they don't even have to come to you. So it saves you guys a headache on making updates or sending out updates to individuals. But just having that interconnectability, which is very important. The reason why that we're focusing on this trend is that GIS is scaling not only vertically in the sense of, it's the map users to IT, to directors, to C-suite and stuff like that. It's also moving horizontally where it's like, okay, how do we get public health involved? How do we get public safety involved? How do we get social services involved? And that scalability as a team of, if you have a small team, is very difficult unless you have infrastructure. And I'm not necessarily mean, oh, when we say infrastructure, there's all that scaling, but just having a mode where individuals can come in and self-serve that GIS for themselves. You set it up once, it's cooking on its own, and then everybody is able to self-serve that data. So that just kind of gives you a high-level overview of some of the trends that we're starting to see. I'm going to give it to my colleague Jay in a second, but just to kind of show that this is where, that self-service GIS is where things are going. So Jay, I'll kind of toss it to you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Good to see everybody out there. So another trend we're seeing is increased use of ArcGIS solutions. And these solutions are pre-baked recipes. You can kind of think of opening up the recipe book, you hit a button and it makes that cake for you, which can be really nice. These solutions are really a great place to get started when you hear about needs coming from various departments. A lot of times we like to recommend go ahead and check out the solutions, right? And we're commonly seeing folks deploy a solution and a number of things happens. Either it's a home run, right? Strike zone, home run, we can run with the solution and it just goes into practice. That's great. We want to see that happening more and more. Another thing that we see is it's pretty good. We need to configure it a little bit further. That's perfectly fine. A third thing we sometimes see is, it didn't really work for us, right? And that's okay as well, but I still highly encourage y'all to check out the solutions because a lot of times, even if you end up falling into that third camp, there's a lot of work that we've put into this solution that you can then steal for the solution that ends up being a right fit for your organization. So how do we get solutions? We work with local governments. We hear about the common things you're doing again and again and again, and we try to help you not have to recreate the wheel. So we work with y'all to find those common solutions that governments are trying to implement and put those in place. And a couple examples that we have are around equitable property value, special events, lead service line inventory, elections management and crime analysis, just really common trends in government and ways that GIS is being used. And takeaways on the solutions that you really should focus on are the fact that they are easy to deploy. You hit a button. So even if you don't end up using it, it really wasn't that much effort on your part. Second one is that they are fully supported. So you can call up tech support if you run into issues, and they're going to be fully supported moving forward. They're included with your investment in ArcGIS, so there's no additional cost. And finally, they are configurable. They're easy for you as an organization to move forward, even as your staff fluctuates over time. So I want to pause for a second. Daniel did a great job. He hit on our portals, whether that's ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. We also talked about hub and enterprise sites. Now we're talking about solutions. I want to pause for a second because these three things are kind of fundamental in the rest of the trends that we're seeing. A lot of times they're the common building blocks that we see as we go through. So those three things, just remember, it's use of Enterprise Portal, it's use of ArcGIS Online, content management, content creation system, it's use of enterprise sites, it's use of Hub as kind of a content delivery system, it's use of the solutions themselves to actually provide the solution that you need. Really common trend that we're seeing is increased need and desire to have real time inside of GIS. This is going to be things that are changing over time. So a lot of AVL feeds, obviously, things that are stagnant. They're still on the earth, but there's a measurement there. So we think about a lot of weather sensors. And then finally, things that just occur. So if you're looking at doing special events or emergency management, are lightning strikes happening in the area, right? They just occur. So this is a trend that we're frequently seeing, and there's a geospatial component to all this real-time data. But frequently, there's also a desire to do geoprocessing against that real-time data, whether it's a geofence as data moves around, what interaction is occurring. It could be geo-enrichment, it could be reconstructing tracks, but it's more than just real-time data. It's actually doing processing on the data as it comes in real time. We have a trend where we've seen customers be really successful with use of GeoEvent Server over the past years. If you're interested in getting going in this, here's a little pro tip. We have developer subscriptions at the enterprise level that actually allow you to deploy server roles. This can be a good idea if you just want to kind of get your hands dirty. You can use that developer subscription to be able to try out GeoEvent Server as you develop your business case internally. However, we also have new users, new use cases, and we hear you, there are also some challenges for some users using GeoEvent Server. We know it is a complex piece of technology. So one of our updates to talk about today in our trends and updates session is use of ArcGIS Velocity, which is another option. It's real-time data processing, and it's a software as a service option. So it really lowers your barrier to entry, really increases your speed to adoption and value out of that software. Velocity is tied to your ArcGIS Online organization, similar to how ArcGIS Online is a software as a service option. It's built on Kubernetes, it's ready to use, it's ready to scale, it's extremely reliable. And we know in the real-time space, a lot of times you need those things. It has to be resilient, has to be very reliable. So this is also a piece of technology that has been developed with the common cloud IoT platforms in mind. So as we talk about AWS and Azure, Velocity is built to configure with those IoT platforms out of the box. Makes it really easy, wizard setup, that type of a thing. And it has the real-time component in there so that you can do all that consumption of real-time sensor data, so that you can do all the processing in real time. But it also has a big data analytic capability as well. So that would be, for instance, if you're collecting crime data, you get a lot of crime data over time. You want to start doing quarterly reports where you chew through all this data and look at hotspot, cold spot analysis. Velocity is a great option for you. As we're talking about trends, we're seeing increased adoption of web services in the land record space. This is really exciting because this is a space that for a long time has been very ETL process driven, right? We're moving lots of data back and forth as we do parcel editing, as we try to tie into CAMA systems. With our tax parcel mappers, we have a lot of good options in ArcGIS Pro. Just using ArcGIS Pro in general is going to allow you to tie into these web services, and that's going to open up a whole world of opportunity that we'll talk about in a second. But with that, we do have our Parcel Fabric option in Pro that really brings quality and record-driven workflows into that environment. And so what's the value of all this? Well, increasingly, we're seeing CAMA systems that have APIs that we can actually tie into. So it's not as heavily ETL-based. We can actually tie into the service. And what that means is that our assessors and our appraisers can have internal hubs where they can do value analysis as they do reval work, look for property characteristics and outliers in their data to make sure that they're doing valuation in a really good way. It's tied into the services, so we're not having to ETL data all over the place. And then on the public side, we can use solutions like the Equitable Property Value Solution to really present a very modern, responsive design system for looking at your land records data, but also looking at things like tax distribution and seeing where all that information is going, essentially. Another trend is in the public safety space is continued use of ArcGIS. These have been really strong users overall, whether it's around data management, analysis, dispatching, planning, mitigation, response, recovery, and then overall citizen engagement. We're continuing to see ArcGIS be tied into use of CAD and RMS data systems. If you have this data in a SQL database, you can use XY event layers today, publish it out, and get pretty near real-time data around CAD and RMS data, throw it into a dashboard, have that single pane of glass. So that's a really great use. In the fire space, continued use for briefings, for target hazard analysis, community risk reduction, and to aid with the accreditation process. So bringing in business analysts, community analyst data to be able to really understand the characteristics of your community, but also the vulnerable populations that you're serving. In the law enforcement space, we have some really great crime analysis tools in Pro that you can tap into. And also, you know, on the real-time space that we just moved on from, we're seeing a lot of fusion centers popping up, being able to bring in that real-time data, get it out to officers as quickly as possible. In the emergency management space, continual use of ArcGIS, pre-planning, mitigation response, and post-event needs. This is a great time to get your hurricane house in order, right, before hurricane season is really upon us. So that would be something I really advocate for is let's go ahead and get those plans in place and make sure we have our hurricane preparedness plans ready to go. And I'll also highlight, as we're talking about updates in the space, we have really great updates to our debris management solution and to our damage assessment solution. Highly encourage y'all to check those out. If maybe you used them in the past, there's some really cool updates that have happened for those. Another trend I want to highlight today is that digital twin conversations are happening at your organization, whether you realize it or not. Another trend is people are still trying to figure out what the heck digital twins are, right? So we're here to help guide you on that. It's not necessarily one thing. I like to think of a digital twin as really just a digital representation of a real world system. And it really helps you get a pulse on that real world system. You know, a number of years ago, Jack framed up GIS as the intelligent nervous system. And this is how you can kind of think of a digital twin in many ways. As an organization, you're going to have to determine what digital twin or what digital twins are you interested in. We're here to help with that. See folks that are interested in environmental twins. A lot of times this is around real-time sensors, so maybe stream gauges, looking at air quality gauges. A lot of times very, very helpful information when looking at health and looking at potential damage and loss of life. We see a lot of folks interested in planning twins as well. We got great software options to make it easy to communicate about current projects in your community, but also to be able to pull in your zoning codes and look at the height restrictions and setbacks that y'all might have in your community, and also feature some key data indicators, whether it's jobs, traffic, parking in your area as you look at different scenarios that you're planning out. In the design and construction space, we've been able to pull CAD data in for a long time, but the visualizations have gotten even better. So looking at really project-specific data. In our operations twin space, really getting that pulse based on sensors and frequently it's around facilities management. And then, finally in the reality capture space, building out high-quality 3D reality models in your community. While we're talking about 3D, another update in this space is we're seeing more and more communities actually use subscription-based 3D services. It's really hard to manage a 3D model over time as your data changes, as your downtown area changes. There's some really great vendors out there who have 3D models that are a subscription service that you can tap into. We also have in the Living Atlas a 3D OpenStreetMap option. It's not quite as reality, but it does give you a pretty good realistic rendering of the built environment. So encourage y'all to check that out. Another trend is that, for a long time, GIS has been used to model the outdoor space, but we're seeing it more and more come into the indoor space as well. This frequently manifests in 4 different areas. We have visitor experiences, so as people come into your facilities, really giving them a kiosk experience or helping them find different people, co-workers, helping them find conference rooms, and then giving them turn-by-turn directions so that they can find those. And this can tie into ADA compliant data, so you're helping people find the elevators versus the stairs, things like that. We also use this in the space management area, so we know a lot of our offices are changing in the way that we use them. This can be used for hoteling, assignment of offices and things like that, which can be a really difficult thing to do unless you actually have this space modeled out. We're seeing indoor GIS used a lot around asset management, so that operations twin that we saw earlier, but also for being able to submit requests and actually track maintenance over time. We're also seeing indoor GIS be used to integrate with systems like CityWorks, right? So that we can see our open work orders, we can open new work orders as well. Finally, in the safety and security space, really, threat monitoring around facilities, but also, in the time of an emergency event, being able to understand the built environment we have in the spaces in these buildings. So what's next for all y'all in your organizations, right? You're at NCGIS today. That's really great. Excited there's another day of this conference. So please continue to check out all these great sessions. As you're doing this, we know it's hard, but it's good to be continually thinking about GIS at your organization. So we encourage you to come visit us at booth 38. We've gotten some really great traffic. It's been so nice to connect with everybody. If you haven't seen us, please come by. If you have seen us, come by again. We love just chatting with y'all and hearing about your goals. We don't like hearing about your challenges, but we know that happens, so we'll talk to you about that as well. And just brainstorm. When you're at a conference, it's really easy to focus on today, but we really want to help you think about the next 3 to 5 years. We want to help you get in front of the changes that need to occur to help you and your organization be successful. We're here to support that. As we look at 2023 and on, I would encourage you to connect with your account team. Daniel did a good job covering that slide. If you don't know who is on your account team, we're happy to help you with that. We love to talk through this stuff. We love to brainstorm, and we really want to know how can we help you be successful in the long run. So hope y'all enjoyed the rest of the conference. Thanks to NCGIS for having us, and we're here to take questions if anybody has any. And if we have time, talk about Survey 123 and field maps as well.
Since there's not a question, there was that question from the last.
Yeah, we'll cover it, yeah.
Someone asked, how do you figure out what products to use?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on that?
It's a really great question, and we wish there was like a perfect decision tree. There's not. These products evolve really quickly. If you've been in the Survey 123 ecosphere, you know that that product is a product that has just matured incredibly fast. It has a lot of complexity in a good way with what you can do with the smart forms. Field maps also, pretty quickly evolving as we move forward from collector. And the capabilities in field maps has really evolved over time as well. I mentioned connecting with your account teams. I would recommend reaching out to your account manager and solution engineer. If you ever have a question like that, hey, here's the project we're working on. Is there any recommendation? Should we go field map? Should we go survey 123? We also have quick capture, right? So we know there's a lot of options in your toolbox and we want to help orient you. I'll just say, from my opinion, field maps is a really map-centric product. So if you have people who are going to benefit from having a map, if you have folks that are going to be doing more work on the map with geometries, points, lines, and polygons, I think field maps makes a lot of sense. Also, related records are really easy to parse through as a user when you're in field maps. Survey 123 is amazing if you need to build more complex forms, really detailed calculations. It builds out a data model itself, and you can then build out different forms for different use cases on that same layer, which is really nice. So if you have those complex data entry needs, or if you have users who just really need to input data through a form, Survey 123 might be the ticket for you. But we are here to help you talk through all those decisions.
There's also a workshop tomorrow on that very topic.
All right. Are you doing that workshop? So we have Joseph Kursky doing a really amazing workshop tomorrow if you want to learn more about that. Thank you, Joseph. Yes, sir.
You said velocity ran on AWS and Azure. How does an organization get to choose?
Yeah, so Velocity actually does not run on one or the other. It runs on Azure, and if you have, as an organization, Azure credits, you can actually put them to use to acquire Velocity. But what it does is, if you're familiar with kind of the real-time space, we got to tap into either ingestion of these messaging systems, or a lot of times we're seeing, hey, we kind of have this data lake. We'd love to do big data processing against this. We built those tools inside of Velocity to just configure by default with those IoT platforms. So it's not like you're having to build it from scratch. It's a drop down and you say, I'm in AWS or I'm in Azure, and it's really easy to configure that at that point. It's a great question.
We have a few more minutes if anybody has any questions. If not, I would encourage you to go by the ESRI booth, meet your account team if you haven't met them already.
Yeah.
They're good folks. They know not only what's out there now, but what's coming along. They can help guide your projects.
Yeah.
Great answer. Any questions?
Thank you.